Hey, Lori, are you there? I thought maybe we could work out some logistics.
Are our two interpreters okay? Hi.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kim. And I
Nice.
just wanted to ask you if you were going to have a spotlight on the interpreters, or because typically we'll switch every 15, 20 minutes or so. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
So we informed our ASL participants because there's no way for me to highlight just you while we're
Mm,
sharing screens and everything else.
Okay.
We notified them to log into two different languages, either it's horrible, Russian or Portuguese. So they can click on that and they'll be able to see you signing for them. Does that make sense?
Oh, interesting.
So it won't show up here because of all the panelists and everything else that's going on. So we're going to try it. We've never done it before. It's actually a person that we kind of know, and they are going to, they have a phone number of somebody sitting right here so that they can, if they have an issue, they'll text, and then we will let you know if there's a problem. I don't anticipate anything, but hopefully they'll log in soon, and you will not be able to see them, but they should be able to see you. And if everything's going well, then we just continue going. If, like I said, if there's an issue, we'll figure it out from there.
Okay.
Sorry, it's our first time doing this whole thing, so.
Yeah, it's actually my first time hearing about doing it
Okay.
in such a way. So I'm intrigued. I'm gonna have to look into that. I like it.
Yes,
I noticed
Thank you.
live on YouTube. Is that
yes,
okay?
yes. So you won't be featured live on YouTube. You're actually in as a panelist. Did you get a translator invite that came separate? Kind of weird.
I did get several emails, so I wasn't sure which one to click
Okay.
on.
So I wonder if you see the one that says interpreter, if you could try clicking that instead
Okay.
of this.
Sure. I do see that here. Yes. So
Let's
you'd like me
do
to log
that.
out and click on this link
Yes,
instead?
let's leave the meeting because you'll still have that if you need to come back, but you'll log out, log in on the interpreter invite for
Okay.
both of you. Yes.
Okay. Sharon, you got it. It came at 3:24 for me.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't see it quickly, and that
Okay,
made
perfect.
me nervous.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I do not have one that came at 3:24.
Oh,
Okay, I will see if I can resend it for you. Give me just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay.
okay. Then I will go ahead and log out and see if this works. I will do it. Okay.
Okay, just a moment.
Thank you.
Give me just a moment. I'll get that for you.
Okay.
Okay, now.
Lori, I got quite a few emails, so I'm sure I'll get this one.
So because the webinar's already started, it's not allowing me to resend your invite. It won't come just from me, it will come from the Zoom webinar itself. If you could just search for possibly the word returning, that'll give you the name of the webinar, and it should have an ASL or an interpreter option for you to choose to join the webinar that right there.
Yes, I got other ones, but maybe that one went to spam somehow or something. So
Possibly.
search returning.
To if you just start with that, it should show up in your email.
Okay.
Okay. Returning.
Nope, not returning. Okay, let me try just returning, not returning to. And I have panelist for return, but nothing that says interpreter or anything like that. Okay, here's Lori Valdez invites you to a Zoom webinar at 3:24.
Okay.
Ha ha. All right, I'm going away and I'm coming back.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank you
and
for being
thank
here.
you. You were very creative in helping me. Thank you. Be back.
Okay, everybody. Well, good evening and thanks for coming. I think we only have a few people that are not staff members in the audience. We have everyone over there. Hello. And then we have a family down here. Thank you for coming. We have a lot of people attending on the virtually in the webinar format. Do we have a total number? Anybody have a
Online?
Oh, no, well, that's okay. We have a lot of people attending via webinar. So we'll talk about how that plays out and how you can ask questions in both formats soon. Since we are, I think I'm, for the sake of talking, I'm going to slip my mask down for a few minutes just so we have a nice social distance here, so that works. Okay, anyway, if you, obviously we have sign language service. If other translations, if we need Spanish translation, we have that too. So, si necesita servicios de traducción al español, levante la mano, si está bien. Okay. Para servicios con Zoom, seleccione el globo de traducción en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Okay, so I think with that, we're ready to continue. So welcome back, everybody, this is our first official meeting with folks back in families and others back with us. We have quite a bit we'd like to cover tonight, so I'm going to jump right into that and show you what we're going to talk about. So tonight, I'll do a brief overview of the purpose of the meeting. We'll introduce our panel members. We have a lot of our in-house experts on how we're going to be reopening with us. I'll show you some of the resources that we're going to use tonight and orient to them to find them. So you can, while you're during the meeting, you can access them. We're going to spend a chunk of time talking about our independent studies programs and the options, how to enroll, what it entails. We'll take some questions and answers about that. And then we'll get into our return to in-person instruction plan, where a lot of the details that some of you are interested in, how are we cleaning classrooms, what are we doing for masking, spacing, all of those details will be there. And then we'll do some questions and answers about that. So for those of you that have questions, well, we'll get into that in a second. Let's move on to this part of it. So we'll talk about asking questions and getting answers in a minute. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to share as much information as we can about how we're going to reopen our schools, and with detailed information about, like I said, masking, what we're doing for spacing, how we're cleaning, any of those items that you might wonder about in terms of reopening. It's also, like I said before, to share a lot of information about our independent study programs options. So we'll get into that, like I mentioned before as well. We will, for both sections, the independent study section and for the general reopening section, have a question and answer period. So we'll do, for those of you that are out in the audience, you have a form that I think you were handed. And if you have questions, please write them on the form. You can raise it up, and then one of our staff members will come around and hand it forward. If you are out in the Zoom world, in the webinar format, you can ask your questions in the question and answer section on your Zoom screen. We have someone that will be monitoring the questions. We'll answer as many as we can directly. If there are lots of questions that are very similar, we'll try to group them together and address those topic areas. So that's how you can get your questions asked and hopefully answered in both formats. All right, let's go through and move on to the next screen here. So I think I'll ask our panel members who are present tonight to introduce themselves. We have quite a few people here with us tonight. And panel members, if I ask you to introduce yourself, why don't you unmute and introduce yourself and then go from there. Why don't we start down at the very end with Ms. Kim.
Hello, my name is Grace Kim. I am the Director of Alternative Programs in the New Haven Unified School District, and I oversee the PLA program here.
Miss Kim? Oh, great. Grace? I don't think is she down there? Yeah. Yeah. Grace, I don't think anybody could hear you out there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marcus Lamb. I'm the Director of Student and Family Services. I oversee enrollment and other services we provide students and families, which includes the Union City Family Center.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jason Rogers, Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation for the district.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Benefield. I am in the Personnel Department at New Haven Unified School District.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Derek McNamara, Chief Personnel Officer. I oversee HR and personnel.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Kapler. I'm the Director of Special Services here in New Haven.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Matos. I'm the Director of Digital Services for New Haven.
Okay, so we are hopeful that between all of the folks we have in-house tonight, that we will be able to address any questions that you have in the audience and out in the Zoom world, any questions you have out there. And with that, let's begin. So shift back here. Okay. One of the first things I'd like to do is orient all of you to the resources that are readily available for you all the time. We will use these sections I'm going to reference here to keep the updates will be here. Other resources are here, and let me show you where they are. We use our website for the primary vehicle for providing general information. And so, for example, if you are good, you can see our website. So this is, you can, I have the link to our website in case you don't know where it is. I'm assuming most of you probably know how to access our website or find it. If you go to the Spotlight section on our website, there's a section that says Reopening Plan and Information. If you click on that, you'll see the plan that we're going to be talking about later on here is you can review the plan here. The frequently asked question document that you'll have access to. A lot of the information, and I would guess a lot of the questions you may have might already be answered here as well. We have a new section here, and this is a document that I think will be very helpful. It's not only helpful for staff, but for parents as well. The Alameda County Office of Education has partnered with the Alameda County Public Health Department to create a school reopening guide. And it's got great resources. This is where I go to get information. So we've made it easy for you to access this, and you can go to our website here and click on it. It'll take you right to the resource that's available. And this guide, for example, when you click through it, it has links to, if you want to know what the federal government and the CDC, what their latest guidance is, you can find that information here. If you want to know what the state guidance is from the State Department of Public Health, that information is here along with some other resources. And these are constantly kept updated. And then if you want to know what our local health officers are recommending, you can find that information here as well. If you keep clicking through, as a parent, there's a lot of additional guidance that we can use about vaccinations, good references for you as well. But I'm going to flip to the very back of this. And if you go here, these are resources that are for parents and other school-related people. For example, this document here is a kind of a step-by-step guide of what happens if your child has COVID-like symptoms, and all walks through all of those scenarios. So again, this is where the county's done a great job of providing with us with current information. This is where I go to get information often, and where our staff goes to get information. So it's available for you on our website. So again, website is where you can find the most updated information, and we'll do our best to keep it updated. In documents such as, for example, our frequently asked question document, you can click on that, and you can look at the top to see when it was last updated. So for example, here, this document, the questions and answers, if you've already read through them before today's July 22nd, you know there's no new information for you there, okay? Our challenge is going to be keeping these documents updated because, especially right now, I feel like things are changing to one degree or another almost on a daily basis. So that'll be a challenge for all of us, but we'll get through it all together. Okay, so again, these links are here, and what we'll do is I'll make this This presentation will make it available as one of the resources in that section on our website afterwards. So if any of you are thinking, oh my gosh, I saw John's presentation, what was that link again? You can just go to our website, go into that section and access this information there. All right. Oh, there's the ACOE link as well. Okay. At this point, what I'd like to do is spend the first part of our session having Ms. Kim, the coordinator of our alternative programs, including the independent study programs, go through in a little more detail about what those options are. We sent out that survey about 2 weeks ago. We got about 1,000 responses, and I would say there was a lot of interest in knowing more about our independent study programs. And things have changed a little bit. The programs changed a little bit, the rules have changed a little bit. And I think I will turn it over at this point, Ms. Kim, if you are ready. You might need your microphone if you, just to make sure everybody can hear you. And I'm gonna turn it over to you. You can tell me if you want to, I just realized you can't advance the slides. So.
Yeah, the mic's not working, but I'll speak loudly.
Oh, it's not a hot. Oh, okay, that works. All right. I think you might be able to unmute that mic though.
All right, so the Personalized Learning Academy, this is part of the Dakota School
Grace,
for
you need to unmute yourself on Zoom too. Are you?
I am on mute.
You're on mute. Here we
Can people hear me? Okay, all right. So the Personalized Learning Academy is, or PLA, is part of the Dakota School for Independent Study, and this is an alternative school of choice. PLA provides a TK-12 independent, innovative, standards-based curriculum delivered through a strictly online instructional model by fully credentialed teachers. Okay, so the goals and benefits of PLA is to provide distance learning option for families. It's an option for students who may have health issues who should remain at home, for students who prefer to do independent learning, and there's flexibility for older students who may have jobs, participate in sports or activities. They do have control over when schoolwork is done because we're non-traditional in terms of being in school from, let's say, a 9 to 3. We do have smaller class sizes, and then there is an opportunity for one-on-one time with teachers. We have an elementary PLA program, and in our elementary PLA program, there is a synchronous instructional component in a virtual class with their teacher Mondays through Fridays for 15 minutes per day via Zoom. We have 3 different cohorts, and each cohort will have up to 12 students, maybe a little bit more at the beginning of school. And there is also small groups which are provided, can add instructional time for support in ELD, ELA, or math as needed for students. And teachers follow the same grading practices as other elementary teachers in our district. This is the schedule for PLA Elementary. On Monday, it's a little bit different. All students will be meeting at 9 o'clock for a virtual synchronous instruction for all students. And you can see that there are 3 cohort times at 9, 10:30, and at 1 o'clock. There's also small groups built in, as I've mentioned, for additional support for students. We are using Edgenuity, which is our online platform. They have a K-5 program, and there's classes in language arts, math, science, PE, and PE. We will have also supplemental online programs such as Mystery Science and Imagine Learning and Math Kids. Students are expected to do schoolwork 2 to 3 hours per day on their online learning programs. And students are expected to take all their district and state assessments. For our TK program, we use Ms. Humblebee's Academy, Reading Eggs, and Math Seeds. In our middle school PLA program, it's a little bit different, but the same in that on Mondays, our students are expected to virtually check in with their teachers for 15 minutes through Zoom. On Tuesdays and Fridays, there is a virtual class check-in period for 70 minutes. And teachers can work up to 16 students at a time. Students are all enrolled in at least 5 classes in ELA, English Language Arts, Math, Science, PE, and they have an option for a 1 elective. They have 1 teacher who monitors the coursework for all of the students. Teachers are not content specialists, but they guide students through the learning process and provide access to resources to support learning. Students can take one in-person elective at either Cesar Chavez or IVC, and they can have access to in-person clubs, band, and sports teams if concurrently enrolled. And teachers, once again, follow the same grading practices in report cards as other middle schools.
Grace, if I can just interject for just a second. For those of you out there that might have, or many of you may be starting to have some questions about our independent studies program. If at this time, we can try to get people to just put those questions in the chat. We can keep those towards the top and address those. And then once we finish the independent studies part, we can transition into the other questions about social distancing and mask wearing, all of those types of things when we get to our plan. So if you have questions about that kind of thing, you can hold off just for a little while. It'll be easier for us to make sure that we're answering the questions related to independent studies. Okay, thank you. And there we go.
And then this is the schedule for a middle school PLA. You can see there is a morning virtual class at 9 o'clock, and then there's also an afternoon one at 12:30. After each of the virtual classes, there are office hours for additional support for students. During the virtual class time, there is a check-in, and also this is where students need to take their assessments, having their test on lock, which must be proctored and monitored by the teacher. We once again use Edgenuity as our online program for language arts, science, and social science. However, we do use the Acellus online program for math, and there is a district-developed curriculum for PE. Students are expected to work at least 4 hours per day on their coursework. And once again, students are expected to take all their district and state assessments. Okay, and then last we have our high school PLA program. In high school, students become much more independent in terms of the fact that there is a virtual check-in period once per week for about 70 minutes through Zoom. Students can take up to 2 in-person electives at Logan, including their ROP program. There's also forensics, band, and sports teams, space permitting, or they can take an academic class that is not offered at PLA. Once again, space permitting. If currently enrolled, they can have access to Logan clubs. All of our academic courses meet the A2G requirements, and we do offer some advanced placement courses. Once again, we have one teacher who monitors all the courses for each of the students. Teachers are not content specialists, but they do mentor and guide students through the learning process and provide access to resources to support learning. And once again, teachers follow the same grading practices and report cards as James Logan High School. Okay, and this is the schedule of our high school PLA program. You can see that there are a virtual class in the morning, and there's virtual classes in the afternoon. And students are scheduled into either, let's say, Tuesdays at first period or Thursdays during third period. After each virtual class, once again, there are office hours where students can meet up with teachers for additional support. At our high school, we use the Acellus online program for all of our courses, but there are district-developed curriculum for PE, life skills, and ethnic studies. Once again, students should work at least 4 hours a day doing their coursework, and students are expected to take all of their district and state assessments. We find that students who are self-directed and independent learners have good time management, who proactively seeks help, manages academic rigor, and there's parental support. These are some characteristics that we have for our successful students in PLA. PLA is a voluntary program, and so students can return to their residential school at any time. We do recommend that they transfer after a grading period between a semesters or between the trimesters. However, I just wanted to be transparent that a residential site, especially at the elementary level, may be full. And so they may be referred to another school site if they do want to return to in-person instruction.
All right. So we are at that. That's an overview of our PLA program, which would be the program. We have two independent study programs. We have a standalone school, the Dakota School for Independent Study, which is where you would go if you were on a diploma track through independent studies. But for people and for this purpose, where we're at now, more people I think are interested in being able to use this as a temporary program, and that's why we have our Personalized Learning Academy. So. Mr. Mattis, do we have any questions on?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions about social distancing in the classroom and whether or not we'll be following the CDC recommendation of 3 feet.
Okay, we will definitely get to that. We're going to cover that. Do we have any questions specific to independent studies at all?
Is there a deadline for enrolling, and are there still spots?
There is not necessarily a deadline for enrollment. We've been trying to transfer students over to PLA as soon as possible. And so we are soliciting names for students who want to transfer. And we've been pretty good about transferring over everybody at this point.
I do want to add though that, if you want out, we'll do our best to get you out. We can't promise necessarily that you will end up at your home school, but you would, if you want to go back into a regular classroom, we'll definitely be able to accommodate that. But if you want to get in after the school year starts, I can't promise you how quickly we'll be able to do that, simply because it involves could involve some significant staffing changes. So I would encourage all of you, if this is a program you think you're seriously thinking about, either inquire a little more to get more information if you need it, or to enroll sooner than later, ideally before school starts. Ms. Kim, where can people go to get more information about your program?
Where can they get more information about the program?
I think the best way is to maybe contact me, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with a parent or a student.
Okay, and that you can find all of this information on our website as well. So that there's enrollment information there in the PLA and whatnot. And I believe you've put that. Let's see. I don't know if did you include that information in your slide deck? I don't remember. That's okay. We can make sure you have it if you're not. All of the enrollment information for the PLA and other areas, I'll show you. You can go to our website as usual, because that's where, again, most of this information is housed. You can go under Departments and Services and hit the enrollment link. And then all the information you need about how to enroll in the PLA can be found there. Okay, Mr. Mattis, do we have any more questions related to independent studies?
Just questions about, it's clear that the PLA, there's some transfer in and out, and there's some ability to do that. Is that the same with the traditional Dakota School for Independent Study program? Can they transfer back and forth?
Do you want to tackle that?
What was the question, please?
The question is in the PLA, you can transfer out. We try to accommodate that. We do our best to accommodate that within 5 days. If you want out, we'll try to get you in as quickly as we can. How about the Dakota School for Independent Studies?
So at the Dakota School for Independent Study, we do have a independent study, traditional independent study program, where it is structured a little bit differently, where it's actually in person. But that is also another option for students.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the best way to characterize the two programs are the Dakota School for Independent Study is a separate school that has a graduation track program. And the PLA is a program that's designed for transitions between programs or while you're concurrently joining programs. In this case, if you are worried about sending your student back to school because of COVID, you would enroll in the PLA. And if you plan on returning back to your home school, that would be what you would do, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that students in the traditional independent study program have gone back also. And we really try to actually support the students in terms of whatever their goals are. And so we want to, if they want to come over, we're going to try to do that as best possible.
Okay. And again, so that is another option. It's a great school, and the students graduate from that program every year and go to places like Cal and other colleges. However, if you're looking at this as an interim setting, my recommendation would be that you explore the Personalized Learning Academy. Any other questions there, Mr. Matos?
We've got multiple questions about if I move, and I think you've already addressed it. If I'm in the PLA and I want to move out of the PLA, how does that work? If I'm in the PLA and I want to go back to my school, do I get to go back to my school? Which I think you've already addressed. So those are some of the questions.
I can reiterate those two things. And again, if you go to the PLA and you decide maybe conditions are better, or you find that you don't think it's the right program, and you want to go back to a regular in-person school, we will accommodate that within 5 days. But we can't promise that you will be able to go right back to your home school. So that'll be a decision that you may have to make a choice. If you want to go out, say 3 or 4 weeks after school started, we may be able to accommodate you. If your home school is, say, Pioneer, we might not be able to accommodate you at Pioneer, but we might be able to accommodate you at Searles. So you'll have to make a choice of whether or not you want to stay in the PLA and wait. We can put you on a waiting list for your home school, or if you want to go to Searles and instead. So that'll be a choice that will come up. We can definitely get you back into a school for in-person, but due to how things might be changing, we can't promise it'll be your home school to move immediately back to. So I hope that's clear.
And another question was, if students are in the PLA but not completing the work as assigned, do they get, what happens?
I think I'll let Ms. Kim address that question.
If a student is enrolled in the PLA but not completing the work, after interventions, what happens? Do they get placed back into an in-person school? If students are not succeeding in the PLA program, we're going to go through a process of trying to help support them through that person teacher. They may be brought up through cost if there is still further concerns, and then we may do an SST with the student to provide additional support. And then eventually, if students are not succeeding, they may use the fact that they're in additional school, but we really do try to work with students to help them be successful if PLA is their choice. And just for those of you out there who are, in the education world, we fill it with acronyms. So COST and SST are terms for meetings that are held where other people that can provide support for students are involved, so that we can try to make sure we're identifying needs and meeting them. That's what those two acronyms stand for, COST and SST. Any other questions out there? A question about whether or not PLA offers AP or honors classes. Does the PLA offer AP or honors classes? We have some AP classes. We do not offer honors, regular, and some.
This is not audible on Zoom.
We can do US history, language, we can language, and I think literature. And we also offer calculus, which is an AP class. If someone wants to take a look at the course offerings, where would they find that information? For the course offerings that they would, yes. Yeah, you know what, I can put it on our website. Okay. So if you're interested and want to know more about the course offerings, you can go to the website and find that information there. If it's not there, you can always contact the PLA program directly. But we'll try to make that available soon online. How are we doing with independent studies? Other questions? No, not many questions about, any more questions about the PLA. That way there's a lot of duplicate questions about the PLA. Okay, great. We're going to move forward to the next section of our agenda, but if you think of a question related to the PLA and you want to ask it, please feel free to put it in the chat. We just kind of wanted to make sure we were trying to address all those questions since we're talking about it and during the time we're talking about it. Okay, so let's talk next about what I know a lot of you are and we're all have
an interest in and want to make sure that we are addressing, which is our return to in-person instruction plan. I want to, let's see, hang on, I'm going to pull up our plan. Let's see. But before I do, I want to touch on a couple things. So when you're right now, I don't know about all of you, but the news every day seems to have another story about what one district's doing or another. I think Brentwood was the first district to open up in the Bay Area, and they're opening up in their way. And San Jose announced what they're going to do. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the next coming weeks. So the question is, what are we doing, and how did we make decisions on based on what we're doing? And so these are a few, when you're looking through our plan, and then when sites are taking our plan and developing their own site-based procedures, the guiding principles and the kind of the foundational pieces that we use to develop our plan, I'll review them with you real quick. The first one is we are, as I think everybody knows, I'm well-versed in education, but I am not a public health official. We do not have any public health officials employed in our district, and we are assuming that we know more than they do. So we are going to use the guidance from public health officers, the experts in this area, to guide our plan. And we use them in this order. So the agency that guides us most directly and has the ability to tell us what to do is the Alameda County Public Health Department. That's what ACPHD is there. When they're silent on what to do, the next agency we turn to is the California Department of Public Health. So that's what CDPH is. And then when they're silent on what to do, we turn to the guidance that comes from the CDC. And it's not always consistent. For example, up until recently, the CDC was not requiring face masks in classrooms, but the California Department of Public Health did. So we use, in the order that I've described here, Alameda County first, state second, federal guidance third, when we're moving forward. And we're not going to do more if these agencies in that order require us to do something. That's what we're doing. If they recommend something, and this is the next piece of guiding documents, and this is where this information here, this principle, the second one, is where people get frustrated, because all three of those agencies, plus a lot of other agencies, are really quick to give out recommendations. Well, we're not telling you have to do it, but we recommend that you do it. And then they give you a laundry list of things that they're recommending. Everything from, we're not requiring masking outdoors, but it's probably a good idea, to, if you are filtering air in your classroom, we're recommending, if you can do it, put in those infrared filters in every classroom. Well, we can't do that. So we are, and we will, to the degree practicable, implement recommendations from the agencies above, Alameda County Public Health, California Public Health, and the CDC, to the degree that we can. And I know we've got some questions in the chat that have come through already that we'll get to, that will highlight how this can be a challenge. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the details. And this much I know for sure. I was on a call today with Nick Moss, who's the director of Alameda County Public Health Department, and with a bunch of other people. And what I took from the call today is, whatever you're hearing tonight and whatever you're seeing in our plan is probably going to change. And it may change by tomorrow. In fact, some of the guidance that we had yesterday changed today on how we're supposed to respond to students who have been exposed to COVID or have COVID-like symptoms. So it's evolving. All of this is, and we should be all experts in this, right? We've been dealing with this for over a year now, where we move forward in one direction only to get new information and have to move in a different direction. So we're going to be very flexible and adaptable. We'll use the first two guiding principles when we're making different decisions on how to be flexible and adaptable. But we all need to realize that things are going to change. And where do you go to find our changes? If we're not doing it in this kind of format, you go to our website. And I try, if you haven't been getting my weekly emails that I send out to families or to staff members, please figure out how to get them, because every week I send something out about what's happening and if there are changes, and I try to announce those changes there, and then we put everything on our website and steer you that way. So I encourage all of you to, if you If you're not part of one of our email listservs where we send these things out, please do get yourself signed up if you're new to our district or for some reason you haven't been getting them in the past. All right, let's move ahead and see where we're at today in terms of our plan. Okay. Oh, and then, yeah, I mentioned before, we also have an FAQ document that we'll keep updated to the degree that we're capable of keeping up with things, again, found on our website. Okay, so I think I got my slides out of order here. Hang on. Okay, nope, we're gonna go through, sorry, I just realized we'll go back to here. It's time to take a look at our plan. So before we go to that, I am going to go here. So let's take a more detailed look at our plan. I'll walk you through the sections and then we will take questions on the plan specifically. So again, if you want to find out where this plan is, you go to our website, you go to the Spotlight section, you go to Reopening Plan and Information, and you'll see it's right here. You can review the plan here. So I'm gonna access the plan this way and to model it for you and then kind of walk you through it. So this is the plan. We've got the draft of it here. We have modified it a bit based on the input we got from the survey. We will share it with our board on Tuesday night and have the board formally adopt the plan moving forward. It addresses a lot of different areas and I'm going to just quickly go through them for you. And as we get questions related to each of these categories or that fit in the categories, I'll probably refer to this a lot coming up. So the plan, and I think I'll just quickly whip through the sections. So there's a summary of what the plan is. There's a lot of contact information in the next section of the plan. Each site has a COVID liaison and it describes in our plan who they are. So if there's an issue at one of your sites and you get a call, you might be getting a call from one of the people on this list if there's something that comes up that's COVID related. We talk about the plan development process. The first iteration of this plan came out, I've lost track of how many times we've submitted reopening plans and revised our plans, and we will continue to do so. This is the latest version of it, but there's a little history of it here. And then this is, I'm going to stop here just for a second. One of the things that came about in our survey that we sent out was a lack of clarity about what is available as an educational option for this year. And I want to be really clear, there are only two. You're either in person, in a classroom, at a school site for 180 days for all of the normal minutes of a day, or you have to enroll in one of the independent studies programs. The provision that allowed us to do to be flexible last year and create hybrid schedules and have distance learning across our system, that expired on June 30th, and it has not been renewed. So these are the only two options available: full-time, in-person every day, or in an independent studies program. And I think there seemed to be a lack of clarity about that. So I just want to be really clear about that. This is true in every school district across the state. There are no other options for us at this point in time. So there's more information about these options here. You heard Ms. Kim talk about the independent study programs, and a lot of that information can be found here as well in our reopening plan. So I'm not going to spend any time going over that. There's a section on cleaning, disinfection, and ventilation. There's information there and some questions there, FAQ embedded within there, more information. And I know we'll be talking about that coming up. There's information regarding physical distancing and information regarding how students right now, with the information we have, are supposed to move through and between classrooms and whatnot in our schools. So that's a section that's here. There's a section on face coverings and other PPE, what's being required, what we're offering, what the expectations are from across our districts. There's information about health screening and students and staff, what we expect. The short of it here with health screening is we're requiring parents to do it, but you do it at home on your own, and just so that you are keeping track of the symptoms that you either may have or your students may have, and then there's no requirement to submit that information to the daily basis to school. So that's what the guidance states there. But there's a lot of information about what what we're kind of expecting in different scenarios about quarantining and isolating that are found there as well. General information about health and hygiene. I think we're all pretty versed in health and hygiene now that we've lived through this pandemic for a year and a half. Exposure control, things about what we will do, a procedure if someone at a site tests positive for COVID. It happens, and we are well versed in that. There's some of the information about what we're going to do to train staff and families, testing of staff and students, what the general guidance is on that. I can share with you that we have testing on, we will have testing in our district. It is, right now it's based out of Logan, but we will be expanding that testing option for staff and students as we move forward, and probably have it at multiple sites if things go as we plan. Again, how we communicate information is also part of this plan. And then the last parts of the plan are filled with different kinds of supports for mental health, student and parent support options that have all been updated, and other resources for you moving forward here. So that's what the rest of the plan entails. So that's an overview of our plan. Oh, I forgot the Ms. Kapler sections, information about special ed and special ed services. And that is what our plan is. I wanted to get to the end because you saw on our website some of the links to resources that we have available. There are also links embedded within this document as well to try to make it easy for you to access. So this is a source of information that I will be referring to when we get to the Q&A part. And I think what our plan is to, after we review, is to go straight to the Q&A and address the questions that are out there. And I can make reference to where more information can be found in our plans. Also found in, going back to our website, lots of information can be found in the FAQ. If you haven't seen that already, again, you go to reopening plans and information, you go to frequently asked questions, and that document's here. It's translated in Spanish as well. And you'll see similar categories, learning options, class sizes. We had quite a few questions about what are the class sizes going to be? Are they bigger? Are they smaller? Physical distancing information. This was initially developed based on the survey questions, the responses to the survey that we put out. So we tried to chunk the questions into categories and address them here. So physical distancing, a lot about different things there. For example, band and choir. Unfortunately, I found out today that the guidance for band and choir is still not out yet, and we're soon, maybe next week. Well, we're starting school soon. So this is a frustrating part about opening a school district, and for all of you as well, being a parent, is just trying to get the right information and share it. It can be a challenge. Band and choir and some of the other programs, extracurricular programs, we still don't have current guidance on yet. Cleaning procedures, vaccinations, mask requirements, health screening and testing, air quality and ventilation, quite a bit on there about that. Positive test cases and exposure. So you get the idea. And this is another resource for you. I would guess that some of the questions we're going to get are probably already answered here, and that's fine though. We're going to address them here tonight as well. So we are ready now to go back to. Let's move forward to. We'll structure the rest of our session tonight, and we have. This goes until 7:30, or if needed. So we have plenty of time to address questions and cover other information. So with that, we have, let's see. I think this is where I'm going to lean on Mr. Matos here to help me. So it looks like the first questions were about social distancing in classrooms.
We had a couple of parents or participants who are questioning about are we going to have 3 feet social distancing in classrooms?
Okay, I think I'll tackle that one. For questions that are more specific to other areas, I'm going to refer to our panel. So the way our classroom, the average classroom in a school district, most school districts, ours is definitely this way. The average classroom is 960 square feet. And in a 960 square foot classroom, you can put between 32 and 35 desks. I think I said 34 the other day, 35. And you can put them in a way that students can be shoulder to shoulder, 3 feet apart. So for most classes in the district, now this is again an empty classroom. So we have the ability for almost all of our classes to set up desks in a way that can keep students 3 feet apart. There will be some classes where that won't be possible and they won't be 3 feet apart. We have at Logan, for example, we have some larger class sizes in some classes that where there may be situations where students aren't quite 3 feet apart, but by and large, the majority of our classes will be set up that way. The spacing requirement, and there's a little, this is I'll highlight the confusion that's out there a little bit about the distancing in classrooms, is if you looked at the initial CDC guidance, remember that's the federal guidance, they were saying that masks were not required in classrooms, but if you're not wearing masks in classrooms, you should be 3 feet apart. California recognized, and it's been very clear for those of you that have been paying attention, that if the 3-foot requirement is mandated across all school districts, there are some school districts that would not be able to open effectively. So California, the Department of Public Health recognized that. And so they looked at the federal guidance, said, okay, well, that 3-foot distance is only required if we're not wearing masks in classrooms. We're going to require masks in classrooms. So the California Department of Public Health requires masks in classrooms. They do not weigh in on distancing between desks. So by default, we are not required to have 3 feet of distance between desks and students in classrooms. It's not a requirement, but in New Haven, what we did prior to the start of the year, prior to the end of last year, is we had all of our principals walk into all of their classrooms and see how they could set up desks 3 feet apart, and to let us know what the impact was in terms of, if I do this, I might need more staff. It's not really a problem at the elementary schools. We can do that. The bigger problem at the elementary schools is you have classrooms where there's, particularly at the lower grade levels, where they've created great learning spaces, where you have a center over here and you've got, the rug over here where students go. And it's not that we can't get the desks in a kindergarten class, for example, 3 feet apart. We can absolutely do that in every kindergarten classroom, but the kindergarten classroom is going to look different when we do that. You might not have some of the fun different areas that are set up in a kindergarten classroom. So things are going to look different that way this year. So moving forward, if you go to a school, some of the middle schools and the high schools, where you might have classes that have, for one reason or another, larger class sizes, we've tried to mitigate that. We have dedicated money for extra staffing this year. I think we had close to, we had between $800,000 and $1 million of one-time money dedicated towards additional staffing. And based on what we heard from our principals last spring, we've added extra staff. We've used all of that money or close to all of it to add extra staffing to keep our class sizes smaller. So again, we can't, it's not a requirement to have desks 3 feet or students 3 feet apart in classrooms, but we have done everything that we can do to try to implement that anyway. And there will be a few exceptions where that's not possible, but by and large, the majority of our classrooms will have students that are spaced 3 feet apart. Principals are back in schools now, and they are going through the process of developing their own site-based procedures. We set the general parameters at the district, but every site's a little bit different. So they're creating their site-based procedures based on the new guidance. And one of the things that we told the principals yesterday was, go back and make sure, to the degree that is possible, keep student desks at least 3 feet apart. And so they're in the process of doing that. They'll have to work with teachers on that in some cases, but that is one of our goals, is to implement that to the degree that we can. I think I've answered that back and forth about 3 different times.
You did.
Okay. Let's see, we have some other questions here. Why aren't we doing? Okay. This question is, and I think I addressed this too, but there's questions about remote, why we can't do remote. How come we can't do remote instruction? Kids under 12 can't get vaccinated yet. We can do remote instruction, but you have to do it through our independent studies program. The option to do remote instruction in the regular school sites does not exist this year. The provision, again, the waiver of the education code that the governor signed last year expired June 30th. It has not been renewed, and it's not going to be renewed as far as I can see. So you only have, if you want remote instruction, your only option is to enroll in our, at the elementary level in our PLA, Personalized Learning Academy. Okay.
We had a couple questions about recess and lunchtime and PE? And what are the protocols and practices that are going to be in place?
Okay. This kind of gets into masking a little bit too. So I think I'll just tackle this one here, unless, feel free panel if you want to weigh in. I know Ms. Benefield, you have been working directly on a lot of the stuff, Mr. McNamara as well. So the current guidance says that you have to wear a mask indoors in a classroom setting when you're around students, and we will be implementing the recommendation to mask indoors at the school sites completely coming up, and that will be in place. There is no requirement to mask outdoors at this time. So that could change. But so outdoors during recess, students will not have to wear a mask, and they'll be allowed to interact in a somewhat normal basis outdoors. So recess will look relatively normal, I would say, compared to what it did during when we had, well, going back to pre-pandemic. It will look somewhat like that. Kids will be out on the playgrounds on a normal schedule, interacting with each other in normal ways, and masks are not required when kids are running around on a playground. So that is what we're planning on doing for recess. Lunch is a little bit more of a challenge. Our goal is to have as many people eat outdoors as they can. The guidance basically says that when you're indoors in a lunchroom setting, try to put students as far apart as you can. And that will be our goal. We will obviously have some challenges on days where it's raining, and we're working on the site-based procedures for that. It'll look a little different at every one of our school sites, but the overarching guiding principle is that we're going to try to have as much eating outside as possible, and we're going to try to space students as far apart as possible during lunchtime. Even though there is no no requirement that says you have to do one thing or another there. It's a challenge. And that's one that for each site, they're developing their own protocols. Did that address that area?
I think you did.
Okay.
Another thing, got a couple questions in regards to what are the hand washing or hand sanitizing opportunities that students and staff will have during the course of the day.
All right, well, this is good. I can finally pass this question off to someone else. I'm going to pass this question off to Mr. Rogers, who's our Director of Maintenance and Operations, who has been instrumental in providing the resources needed for hand washing and things like that.
Sure, I can answer that question. We will be providing sanitizer in every classroom and in every common area, and soap and paper towels in all restrooms and other staff areas. Pretty sure that covers it all, I believe.
Yeah.
That question.
And you and I know we've had conversations yesterday about the what we're doing to adapt our custodial schedules to make sure that there are supplies and
Correct.
Address that.
We are adapting our custodial schedules for our custodians periodically throughout the day to service all restrooms and classrooms to make sure that we have all hand sanitizer fully, how would I say the best, available to every student, and in restrooms also soap, paper towels, and then also in any common areas, lunchrooms, always anything like that. So I believe that is that. And then also I saw a question on there that we will be disinfecting every classroom, bathroom, and common areas nightly. There was another question on there for that.
Yeah, this is probably a good opportunity to talk about the difference between cleaning and disinfecting, and how we're actually going above and beyond what the general requirement is in this area.
Correct. So currently what the CDC recommends that we do just a general cleaning of the classrooms daily using just a cleaning product, basically like soap. We're going to take that a step beyond. We're going to be using an EPA approved disinfectant to disinfect all surfaces in every classroom, common areas, lunchrooms, even restrooms nightly. It's basically a daily basis. So we're going to take it one step beyond the recommendation that the CDC currently has out.
So that's something that we were pretty happy we could provide. We modeled it during summer school and it seemed to go pretty well. And again, the disinfecting is normally only required if there's there has been somebody that's come down with COVID-like symptoms. And so Mr. Rogers has purchased probably swimming pool size amount of disinfectant. And again, that's the cleaning is one thing, disinfecting is what kills everything. So once each day, everything in every classroom will be fully disinfected. So we're really happy to be able to make that work. That just one extra step that we're taking. Mr. Mattis, any other questions about cleaning or?
There are a lot of questions and they keep coming. So there may be some cleaning questions in there that I'm not seeing.
Okay.
And some of these you just addressed. So we've had a couple of questions about whether parents are going to be able to come onto campus to drop off or pick up their students and what that might look like.
I'll address this, and then Ms. Benefield, or if you want to add something to what I'm saying, I'll get to it. So, at the district level, one of the things, and this is based on a recommendation from, it's either the California Department of Public Health or the CDC, is that visitors and volunteers be limited to essential, to the degree that's possible, limited to providing those that are providing essential services. And where the debate comes in is what's an essential service. So bringing students to school and dropping them off and picking them up is something that it may look a little bit different from site to site. In general, our expectation is that when you're picking up your students and dropping off your students, that you're not going onto campus. It gets a little bit trickier when you have a kindergarten student at the beginning of the year. I know I've had my own kindergarten students, but what each site will be doing is creating their own pickup and drop off procedures that will be site specific. So for example, at a school like Easton, the kindergarten classrooms, I'll use that as an example, there's an exterior gate for the kindergarten classrooms. It's very possible to drop off your student and pick up your student without ever going into the gate. They can set up procedures to do that. At other sites, and I'm trying to think of I'll use Kitayama as an example. Kitayama, it may be necessary for parents to actually go onto the campus to drop off their kindergartner because that's essential. There may be, so all sites are working on this a little bit, but the question to answer that question on a general level, we are not going to allow visitors and volunteers on campus unless there's a really good essential type of reason to do so. And that we're just going to stick with that guidance. That's a recommendation. We're gonna adhere to that recommendation to the degree we can until we get further clarification. One of the things we're gonna try to do is start off more conservatively in how we're reopening and limit things. We're looking at, for example, back to school night. We haven't settled on it, but more likely than not, if things keep going the way they're going, it's probably gonna be like last year where we'll do that virtually to try to minimize the amount of interaction and people on our campuses. So that's our focus to start with. And did I cover that, Mr. Manos, or is there anything?
Yeah, no, you did that, man. I'm sorry. It's hard to
I know.
read and listen at the same time. Another question that's come up multiple times is regarding any sort of temperature check as for students at the start of the day, or what the kind of screening process will be on daily, and that's, I think, that will take a couple of questions off the
Okay. And this is another one that I am going to defer to our expert in this area, Mr. McNamara and Ms. Benefield.
Okay, hello, everybody. One of the things that over the past year, we've learned a lot, and we did really follow the county guidelines for most of the things that we were doing on a daily basis, but things transitioned almost weekly. And one of the things that did change a lot was the screening. And one of the things we did during the summer, we did a lot of learning during the summer with our in-person programs. And we actually utilized a screening process where all families through our queue system were sent a text to remind them to go through a protocol. And that is what we're going to be utilizing to start the school year. There is no guidelines anymore that require us to do temperature checks. There's nothing that requires us to have filled out forms when they show up. And so one of the things we will be doing is just a self-check reminder to families on a daily basis.
So that was, I would say that's a learning, and having been privy to conversations with some of the public health officials out there, I think there was general consensus towards the end of last year that the temporal checks were really not, from a school operations perspective, not really helpful in terms of trying to keep track of symptoms. The single best thing that, from what my understanding is anyway, that you can do as both as staff members and as parents is, and for your students as well, is to really monitor any symptoms you may have. If you're exhibiting any symptoms at all that could be COVID-like, to stay at home. And that is the single best thing we can do. It's everything else, trying to systematize that in a way that makes that's practical and helpful. It really hasn't been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Benefield or Mr. McNamara, but I think they've pretty much determined that hasn't really been productive or helpful.
That's true. It really did not. It actually created more work, and it really did not, and it was not a great indicator. And so as the county guidelines have shifted, doing the self-screening at home has been the way that all districts are doing it, and that's the recommendation from the county. So we will be doing that. But as you know, and as we've learned through summer school in this past year, things transition and things may change. And again, we will let our community and our staff know as soon as we know if things do change in that regard.
Okay, so we have multiple questions about young students and mask wearing, and what are we requiring? What are the parameters around that? Ms. Kapler, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Good evening. Many students struggle wearing masks, including students with special needs and disabilities. We did address this in a session on sort of supporting students to get gradual tolerance towards wearing masks. If you look in the Q&A session, I linked it. It is also on our family learning series. Not only students with disabilities, but other students who are unused to wearing masks. Many of these tips will be supportive to you as families as you prepare to go back to school. Please send your students with masks. Teachers will work on increased tolerance. We do expect students to wear masks, but we also have a plan to support students who, due to their disabilities, really struggle to wear a mask.
Ms. Kaplan, are there other mask options available? I think I know the answer, but I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, we also have face shields with drapes, and we are using the PPE for the adults to mitigate the effects of students they have to work for who need to take a mask break or for some other reasons due to health struggle to not wear masks. Students with disabilities cannot be excluded for not wearing masks, but we do have a protocol to work on sort of the behavioral component of wearing masks or face shield coverings.
And this is one area, just to clarify, that there are certain things that are recommendations that come to us that we implement. There are certain things that are requirements, and the California Department of Public Health did not give it. There's no flexibility on this. Masks are required in settings where children are present in schools. That's indoors, and so that's not something we have any flexibility on. And if you are 100% sure you do not want your student to wear a mask, then you should look into our enrolling your student into the Personalized Learning Academy, because that is not an option. Masking is required indoors in all of our classrooms. I will say that if summer school is any indication, and I spent some time going through our kindergarten classes and the classes for the younger kids, I was amazed at how easily kids seem to have adapted to wearing them in the classroom setting. It was really encouraging to see. So hopefully it won't be a problem, but I would suggest if you have an individual need that or concern about mask wearing and what the options may be, I would encourage you to contact your school site directly, and they can help you with those options that are and connect you with people that you may need to be in contact with directly at your school sites. Okay. Next question or questions?
Yes, we've got a couple questions about requiring testing for students and staff, or what our practice is going to be regarding COVID testing.
Great questions. Oh, these are all great questions, but this is a timely question. I'm going to kick this question over to Mr. McNamara and Ms. Benefield.
Great. Okay, I'll start. One of the things we've done, as Superintendent Thompson mentioned, is that we've secured national testing labs. There will be doing our testing for students and for staff. One of the important pieces through this next year is going to be, if there is an exposure in our district, we want to get the students and staff back as soon as possible, safely. And having to send people out to Kaiser or other places where it could take up to 3 or 4 days just to get results, we can't do that. So having a 24-hour turnaround on national testing is what we're going to be establishing at Logan High School. And then we're going to have stations at every single site in the district. That's the plan, with a rotating teams from national visiting different schools on a schedule, and so that people can have a really quick access to testing. I don't want to get into too much of the weeds, but in the chart that Superintendent Thompson shared from the county today, there's actually very clear delineation for what happens when there's exposure in a classroom for students and staff, if you are vaccinated or not vaccinated, if you are test positive or don't test positive. So there's lots of different things. And as we learned last year, every situation is unique. The amount of exposure depends on lots of factors, and the amount of tracing that goes on from our principals and from Sherry Benefield and our nurse, Michelle Concepcion, is pretty amazing for the limited amount of cases we had. But again, it was learning for us. And so we want to make sure that we are very clear about that. So when we share the different kind of scenarios with you, we want to do it in a way that you can clearly understand. That flow chart from the county is a great way to kind of inform yourself. But we also are going to have backups, the COVID liaisons and the people at the district office who work with me to be the backups, to make sure that when we do call you, we will give you the information that you need.
I think, do we have some questions about vaccinations as well? I think there were some questions about that.
We have a number of questions about, will we be requiring vaccinations for staff? Will we be requiring vaccinations for students? Will we know who in the building is vaccinated or not? So there's that threat of vaccination question.
And that sounds like a good, and that's Mr. McNamara and Ms. Benefield have. They get the pleasure of that category of trying to figure all of that out as well. I don't know if you want to tackle that.
So I could try some of it. The way that it's going to happen with vaccinations, you may read about many school districts looking at the possibility of mandating vaccinations for staff. That's one of the things that I've been reading about in other districts, not in Alameda County though. There also is the possibility, once it's FDA approved for the students, that is something that districts and counties may consider. That is not in Alameda County yet, but those are topics that everyone in the county and everywhere in the state is discussing probably at this time. But at this time right now, going into the start of school, vaccinations for staff and students is not mandatory. In terms of who, we have not done an attestation survey to find out who is vaccinated yet for staff. We may be doing that soon. At the end of it, the reason why we have not done it is it had to do with, if you say, yes, you are vaccinated, you didn't have to wear a mask based on the CDC guidelines. If you did not answer, or you said you weren't vaccinated, then you had to wear a mask. Well, now that it doesn't matter, everyone has to wear a mask indoors. That really doesn't, we don't have to do that type of survey right now, at least. There is an ability for us to know who's vaccinated, and it's what's called the CARE system. It's not public record, but it's something that we can have access. Our healthcare people, like our nurses, have access to that, but it's not something that's public knowledge that we would share with people. I'm not sure if that answered all of it, John.
I think so. And I have just a little information in the meeting I was in today with the Alameda County Public Health Department. This question came up about, is the state going to mandate vaccination? Is the county going to mandate vaccination? And at this time, there is no move to have at the state or county level vaccinations become mandatory. So that, and we don't, as a district, we can, as some districts are, and you'll see more districts or you're seeing, for example, the federal government, I think, just came out today and said that they are requiring vaccinations for all their employees. But if you're not vaccinated, the fallback is you have to be tested. So there's no districts in Alameda County have implemented that, as far as I know. And we're kind of waiting to get more guidance from Alameda County on what that might even look like. So again, this is where we defer to the public health experts, and there's no requirement for that at this time. All right. If we didn't answer your question related to vaccinations, feel free to come back with a different version of it in the Q&A section. For now, I think we have some questions about lunch service and is it going to be free? What's it look like? Mr. Mattis, did you want to try and tackle that one?
Yes, I would like to try to tackle that. So like last year, school meals will be free for every student of school age 18 and under at all sites, all grades, everybody. So that is a move that the FDA has allowed, and it looks like the California State Legislature is also looking to make that permanent moving forward. And so I think they're working on that. So free meals are going to be in place for every student, regardless of whether they qualify or not. And just as a brief aside, it's still going to be really important for school districts and for the schools that parents complete a survey and regarding their meal status, whether or not they qualify for free meals. For this year, it's going to be a much shorter, easier process. And we really do still need that information, even though there really is not a whole lot of incentive to do it because everybody's going to get free meals anyways. We still need that information because those numbers, we get funded based on the numbers of our families that qualify for that service. And so and your school site will be talking more about that with you, your principal and whatnot will be sharing that information. And a couple of questions, and I think Dr. Thompson, this might be just something you might be able to point somebody to, is there are questions about what happens if there is a positive case in a class. What happens if, somebody's parent tests positive? Would you be able to point them in the direction of where you would find that in the plan, or unless you want to handle that differently?
No, I think that's probably the best way because I think Mr. McNamara's touched on it briefly. The answer is it really depends. It's so fact specific depending on the nature of the exposure event. And I'm just going to do a quick time check here. It's 7:12. This session ends at 7:30. So I just want to say this now to everybody out there. If you feel like your question hasn't been answered, please put it in the chat, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A section. What we'll do when this is over is we'll go through and try to find questions that we did not get to and address them. We will update our Q&A document on our website to get these questions answered. So we have a lot of people out there and with a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to get to everybody. So as far as exposure goes and what happens next, we do have information about that in our plan that you have access to that we've already highlighted, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Benefield and Mr. McNamara to maybe, I know that the Alameda County document, for example, has a lot of information. That's probably your best resource, correct me if I'm wrong, that I showed you earlier, that ACOE document to go to find out more specific information, but I'll turn it over to you two.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that. So I think Dr. Thompson referred to every time we have an event, we have had staff members and students who we find out that they are either COVID positive or they've been exposed to COVID. And what really happens in a situation like that is we get the phone call or we get the message that this has happened. And the first thing we do is contact by phone the person who has been affected, either by having a positive COVID or being exposed to someone. And it really is a conversation that takes place between the administrator or our district nurse. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. So I was just sharing that it's each situation for COVID is individual and unique. But the first thing that happens is the person who is either COVID positive or been exposed to COVID, someone with COVID, the first time we hear about it, it involves a phone call to that person. And we take some time to hear the background and the story and ask the pertinent questions that we need to know in order to figure out the contact tracing piece. We get phone calls even of people who who have symptoms, they've been exposed, they have symptoms, but they don't yet have a COVID positive test result. That is a different storyline. So we do take time to talk to each person and guide them through the next steps, always keeping in mind the safety of our students and staff as our goal. So it's very hard to, each is unique and it's not the same with everybody. And we just go to the guidelines every time to make sure safety is the priority.
And I do want to add something. One of the things that for all of us, because we were in remote learning last year, it was a different experience than it was during summer school, and it's going to be different than this year. But we did have 123 cases in our district over this past year. Only one of them was actually determined to be transmitted during school time. It was actually an adult who had come on campus after, it was like an after school kind of get together party. That was the only exposure that actually happened during work time, during school. And so all of the others were people had got it in the community and then they came to school with symptoms, had to get tested. And so it really was a tribute to the amount of time the principals and Sherry and the nurses took to really do the tracing and to really make sure to outreach. One principal spent 10 hours on one COVID. The amount of time it took and the amount of care that they took is pretty astounding. But it does pay off in the end, because the goal for all of us is to make sure it's not in our schools. And I think that is something we're going to have to replicate this year, but it's probably at a much higher level because there's a lot more kids and a lot more adults on campus. But one of the things we did determine is if you follow the protocols the way we established them, people were a lot safer, and that's what we're hoping for.
Yep. So just that.
Okay, and for those of you out there who might want more information, if you probably noticed, if you're looking at the screen, I went back to the Alameda County Office of Education document. And if you scroll to the back, you'll see lots of different bits of information about quarantining, what happens if I'm exposed, what happens if I had COVID. There's a lot of information here. And again, I kind of went through, previously I showed you the step-by-step flow chart for a child exposed to COVID, so you can get a lot of information there. We've had some questions about what happens. Okay, say I have to, my student has to quarantine, and what happens for schoolwork. This is a little bit trickier than in years past, because remember, what we don't have is the option for your student to stay at home and Zoom into a class. That option does not exist. So what it means, if your student is required to quarantine, even if your student isn't sick or doesn't have any symptoms, it's treated like a medical absence. So it'd be the same way. So hopefully it's for a short period of time. I know they've tried to, particularly with students who are vaccinated, to get students back in school as quickly as possible. What we'll be doing is working with, it'll be treated like any other absence. So teachers will be providing your students with work. In some cases, it might be after your student comes back. It's going to depend on how long you're out, what class it is. I will say this, last year we implemented two things right away that should be helpful here. They're called learning management systems. So in the secondary level, we use Canvas. And at the elementary level, we use a program called Seesaw. The intention of those programs is to have one point of entry for parents or students or teachers to enter in information. When it's used very effectively and very thoroughly, you can go in, whether you're absent or not, and see what assignments were assigned by the teacher that day. There might be PowerPoint presentations and other things all embedded within that learning management system. Now, it'll vary depending on the class. PE, maybe not so much. Other teachers that are really well versed in it, maybe more. But that'll be a resource. The short answer, though, is students will be allowed to make up work, any work they miss, for full credit to the degree possible. Our teachers have been pretty good about sharing, getting work to students as quickly as they can. In cases where it might be prolonged, We do have a short-term independent study option that might come in handy here. We haven't worked out all the specifics about what that looks like. That's different from the PLA. That's something that wasn't intended for this purpose, but I know people at the county level are looking at how that might come into play in this situation. So I hope that answered that question. Okay, we have 10 minutes left, and I think there was another question about mental health services or questions about mental health services.
Yeah,
Is that-
there's a couple questions about where can families go for support with mental health, and is there specifically going to be mental health support for students when they come back from a quarantine? Was the specific
Right.
question?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank our school board, because our school board in March, it was in May, I think it was May, April or May, approved a $2 million mental health plan for the district. And it's a big expenditure of money, but that money is going to go directly towards providing site-based mental health support for our, and I don't know, let's see who would, Mr. Lamb. I'm going to let Mr. Lamb explain a little more about what that looks like and how parents might be able to access that.
Yes, so if families or students return to school or feel like they need additional supports for mental or emotional supports, we do have additional staff people on sites this year. At the elementary schools, we have health and wellness teachers, and we have behavioral health providers who are more mental health based staff members who can provide support. At the elementary schools, our principals and teachers are all prepared and being prepared for receiving our students and knowing that, students may be dealing with more trauma, more stress, different types of emotions. At the secondary schools, each site will have a health and wellness center staffed by a behavioral health provider, again, another staff person with a mental health background to support. Secondary schools will continue to have their counselors. And of course, administrators and teachers are, again, prepared for receiving our students, knowing that students are going to be coming back, with additional supports and needs. And so I would say if your child is absent and returning, and you feel that there's additional supports needed, contact your school's administrator, your child's counselor, and just work with them to prepare and prepare for supports.
Just to add to another reference for you on our, what I pulled up was the reopening plan that again is found on our website under that spotlight section, this plan. If you take a look in here, and we skimmed over it pretty quickly earlier, but you'll see a section for socio-emotional needs. This is where there's some mental health support options there. And also section 15 is about parent and student support. You can find more resources there as well. Our website also has embedded within it and other places in that same area, a lot of different resources. And I'll see if I can quickly show you. Let's see. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is, anyway, we only have 7 minutes left. I want to address any other questions while I'm doing this here. Anything else that?
Sure. So one question, we've had a question about what are we doing or what interventions are in place to support students who may have fallen behind in distance learning, due to distance learning.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we were talking about that at our administrative meeting the other day. Let's see, do we have anybody on stage that can best address that? I don't know, Mr. Mattis, do you want to I don't want to put you on the spot.
So yeah, I can definitely speak at a general term. We are coordination of services teams, our cost teams, to really work with school staff, teachers and administrators and counselors and psychologists to identify those students who have demonstrated that they may have fallen behind. We do a number of academic assessments over the course of the year to try to identify those students who may have fallen behind. And so there will be
there will be support for students if they do need additional support. It's important to remember that this year is not going to be focusing on deficit. We are really going to be working on moving forward with our instruction and getting our students where they need to be appropriately by as fast as we can. So I don't know if that answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. The specifics will vary by grade level, by grade level to grade level. And our chief academic officer here, who was probably wishing he was up here talking about it. And okay, yeah, he's reorienting me to our plan. And again, if you go to our plan on our website here, and you see I keep doing this over and over again because this is where I get the access to the information as well. If you go here and you go to section 16, kind of like I highlighted before, there are a number of academic support resources. It's 15 in section 15. So if you go to section 15, page 27 of our plan, it'll orient you towards more what we're doing, what our plan is, and how you can access some of those supports. Okay.
The interpreters became unpinned.
Had a couple questions about sports and how those might be impacted.
I can be happy to address that. The one thing that we have continued to do since July of 2020 is to be able to successfully operate started out as sports pods, and then last year we were able to successfully conduct, starting in the spring, all of our sports seasons. It was a truncated season, and even though we haven't received the guidance from the agencies that control that yet, we fully anticipate and are moving forward with a full fall sports schedule right now. They're out working out and training. All of our students are currently being tested once a week just to make sure we don't have any cases pop up that way. But we are fully anticipating on having a full sports and extracurricular program operating this year, following whatever the guidelines are when we get more specific detail about that. When it comes out. Right now, we're following the old guidance that was in place, which is probably more restrictive in some ways than what might come out soon, but we'll see. Again, full sports season's anticipated. Okay, we have 3 minutes. We can take another, do we want to take one? Is there any last question that I can, or?
Trying to find common ones. Again, we have a lot of questions about what happens if somebody's positive or tests positive, which I think you've addressed. Question about, will school sites still be available for rental by like CYO?
Yep. The answer to that is yes. You can go to our website and go to the facilities use process section. It goes, I'm looking for, and you go there and you can find that information there. We are definitely renting out our facilities. There are new protocols in place when we do rent them out, but we're renting them out. And I think since we're at 7:30, almost 7:28, what I'm going to say is this: please use this time. We can leave the Q&A open for while we're wrapping things up here for a few minutes after the. I think we can leave it open for a few minutes while we're wrapping up the webinar. Is that possible? So please enter any last minute questions you have in the Q&A section, and we will capture those and try our best to answer whatever we didn't get to and update our FAQ about that.
If I can just add one thing, as I'm going through the Q&A for folks online, if I've answered it or I think we've already addressed it, I've been dismissing it. That might not have been the best way to do it. We still have all the dismissed questions. So please, just because I dismissed your question doesn't mean it wasn't important. It just means either we answered it or we were going to answer it. So that's the dismiss. What's the word? Disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Thank you.
So, and we'll do our best to go back and double check. We've had, there are a lot of people participating tonight, and it was not possible to answer every question individually, but we will do our best to go back over all the questions, dismissed or not, and see what we can do to update our FAQ with them. All right. Well, with that, I would like to thank everybody here that participated tonight. This is probably, we've done this before, If things change, we may do this again as needed. Right now, what I would encourage you to do, a lot of it is for those parents out there and even our staff members, like I stated earlier, our school sites are all using this general guidance that we talked about tonight to develop site-specific practices, procedures, and routines. So knowing when to drop your kid off, where to go, how to do all of that, what specifically the cleaning protocol is in a specific classroom, that type of thing, what lunch is going to look like at your school site. Your principals are developing those procedures and will be sending out that information that is site-specific very, very soon. And look for that. You can, and again, we will continue to communicate with you, and we'll provide you as things change with opportunities to ask us questions. A lot of times we send out those Google forms to do it. That's a great way for us to see what is out there, and we'll continue to do that as well. Okay, I hope this worked well for all of you. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I hope we were able to answer some questions. And with that, it is 7:30, and we are officially concluding our information session tonight. So thanks again, everybody.